What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Divij's Den podcast, episode 123. Greatly appreciate you guys showing up for yet another episode of the show. And, my whole thing this year was I wanted to have really interesting conversations with people that are well-versed in spirituality, faith, God, consciousness, the source, as we'll talk about today. And I'm very excited for my guest today, Caroline Corey. She is an award-winning filmmaker, founder of the Omnium Method of Meditation and Consciousness Studies, and has some incredible work in the spirituality realm, which we're going to dive into. So, Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I did go barefoot. I took your advice.
It's good for grounding.
It is good for grounding. I did an episode here this morning with a psychic. And do you know Jasenia?
No.
Okay, you'll probably meet her at the event. But I did with an episode, and I got in last night at like 5 in the morning, and I only slept 5 hours, and I missed my grounding. So during the episode, I took my shoes off, and I felt a lot better.
Good.
Yeah.
Of course, we're surrounded by electromagnetics everywhere.
Yeah, a lot of radiation in this room, that's for sure. Sean Kelly, you got to fix your studio, bro.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But
no.
we can put an energetic bubble around us.
Yes.
And then let the electromagnetic just...
Yeah. Wouldn't it be interesting if our energies were strong enough to combat radiation? Does that make sense?
Well, technically they are. We just don't know how to harness this energy. We're not trained, as kids. We go to school. Nobody tells us anything about energy, consciousness, frequency. I mean, even Einstein said everything is energy. All existence is energy.
Yeah.
So how come we don't talk about that if that's who we really are,
Yeah.
So, and that's the reason why we grow up not thinking about it, not enhancing, not understanding how it works, how we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not something that they teach in schools, right? Like I'm thinking back on my middle school, my high school, my college. There was not one class about spirituality, I guess there was some about, faith and whatnot. But in terms of the earth, energy, connecting with people, that wasn't taught. It was all like history, school, writing, whatever. So do you think there's a fundamental flaw in the school system?
Yeah. When was the last time you used algebra? Or like use the compass, or, the history of your country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They teach us stuff that we just don't really use in real life. So to me, this has to do with rote learning. It's a whole part of the programming, I guess, of humanity to just listen and repeat without really feeling, without experiencing what it is that you're learning. It's a whole different approach.
Yeah.
I think we're moving towards a whole new way, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah.
But where does that change start, though? Because, I'm 28, but I'm almost scared to have a kid right now because I'm like, why would I bring a kid, despite the fact that there are great things about our world right now. But in terms of the education system, I don't really want them sitting in these classrooms talking about, X, Y, and Z stuff, when in reality, I think the first thing that they should be learning about is God and faith. And then in terms of connecting with people, like, I went to USC, and when I graduated college, I was 22 years old, and I come out of school and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm about to work this job. And in my head, I'm like, I literally have no idea how to connect with people. Like nobody taught me that. So I think the work that you do is very important because, you're able to really dig deep into people and help them heal so that they can go out into the world, have an open heart and have open conversations. And I was saying this in my last podcast. When I wake up, the first thing I say is, God, let me rejoice in this beautiful day that you've made. And whatever's for me, if it's a person or a thing, it'll come to me. And if it's not, it's not. And I think in order to have that mentality, you have to have an open heart. And so that's kind of what I want to dig in today with you is, there's a lot of trauma out there in people's lives, right? And there's a lot of things that we need to unpack. And so I want to understand sort of, for the people that are listening, if they're struggling right now, where do they start in terms of spiritual healing?
I think, first of all, why are we struggling? Are we meant to struggle? There are certain cultures that believe, excuse me, it's edited, right?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry. There's certain cultures that believe in karma as a punishment. You're here to suffer and you learn through suffering. I don't really agree with that. I don't think we're here to suffer. We're here to experience certain contrast, maybe,
Yeah.
so that you can make a decision. But I think the biggest problem we have as an individual human being or as a society is we don't know who we really are. And interestingly, we get to our 40s and 50s. You're not there yet.
Yeah, not yet. Thank God.
But it's getting there.
Yeah.
You'll see you already are asking the question, okay, so what's all this about? Like, what's the point of learning a skill, going to school, having a job, and then what, like to buy a house and have a dog and a family? And what is the real purpose? When we start asking these questions, who am I? What have I come to do? What is my real purpose? This is where we get in trouble because we realize the job we have is not aligned with any purpose, just for money. We realize the people we're with were based on fear of being alone or some sort of abandonment issue. You know what I mean? We realize that everything we've done so far is not aligned with who we really are. That's why we suffer.
Right.
You know?
But suffering is a choice, right?
Exactly. So because we don't understand how to resolve these problems, we get stuck there and we suffer. So it's a choice in the sense that you're kind of allowing yourself to stay stuck instead of trying to figure out how to get out of it. You know, there's so many tools out there right now that you could use. Of course, prayer, meditation, going inwards. You know, there's all kinds of tools that people are teaching. And that's what I'm really doing. Because at the end of the day, I realize that is the most important question you're going to ask yourself. And once you go there, you realign your human choices with that purpose, with who you really are, who you want to be. Does that make sense? And everything changes. Then you can find your way to happiness.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. Before we dig deeper, I want to take a step back so people can understand your background a little bit. Can you tell me a bit about your childhood and then sort of your schooling, education, and sort of how you got into the career that you're in?
Yes. I got in this career because as a child, actually I was 5 years old, I had an experience. I was just sitting there and all of a sudden, actually I remember very clearly because it was Christmas Eve. And, there's all these adults in the room, like preparing gifts and the Christmas tree and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're bickering and arguing. And I'm thinking, there is no love. These adults, because, I'm like 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
They don't love each other. And isn't that what Christmas is about? I'm like thinking
Yeah,
that,
for sure.
And so as I'm saying these words, I have this huge experience where I sense beings. Some sort of light came in the room and I felt engulfed in this light. And I felt like it was some sort of, I want to say angelic presence, something like that. When you're 5, you don't know. There's no textbook for that,
For sure.
And so, but it was the most loving, amazing energy. It was like a huge contrast between what the humans were doing and that energy, this light. So I was like, it felt so familiar. It felt like that's the real world, And we had some sort of exchange, some sort of mental something, communication. And I understood that, like, I am that. I am not this little girl.
Right.
So of course I'm 5 years old,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. I didn't tell anybody because I thought everybody had that experience. I didn't think I was special. I didn't think this was special. So I just went about my business,
Yeah.
But as I kept growing up, I kept having similar experiences until I realized, when I was older, I was like, wait, no, not everybody's having these experiences,
Yeah.
What is that? What is that? Where you feel completely real, like it's the real you. And it's the most extraordinary feeling,
Mm.
you know?
And I think it's so interesting you say that because I feel that, I think you're talking about high frequency, right? Your uppermost self. But I feel like sometimes you only feel it far and few between in terms of the amount of times you feel it. And so when I try to look at my life when I do feel those, that feeling, it's usually when I'm in prayer or worship,
Right.
or, I've breath work or something, or even when I was on shrooms, I felt it.
Mm.
So how do you achieve that feeling more often? Or honestly, how do you feel that every day? Because I think everyone wants to feel that.
Exactly. And so as I grew older, I kept having, these similar experience, like from different angles or different version of that experience. And then I realized, so when I was in college, wanted to study psychology because I thought I was weird, or I was like, well, maybe I have some sort of anomaly, maybe
Yeah.
my brain is not functioning properly. Maybe I'm like schizophrenic, So
We're all schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I wanted to like understand myself. Excuse me. Cut.
You want water?
Yeah.
We have other drinks too if you'd like.
What do you have?
Also, bring that mic nice and close. You have a really your voice is beautiful, but it's also very soft.
Yeah, I know. Wait till I do.
Don't be afraid to bring that really in close.
Okay.
And I can send this all to you so you can edit. You can let me know what you want removed.
Okay,
or
cool.
whatever. Yeah,
No,
easy.
this is fine. Just the coffee.
Just the coffee. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Perfect.
Excuse me. Yeah. So I was saying, what was I saying?
You were saying.
I went to psychology. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I did not understand how it was possible for me to just be like a normal person and then spontaneously tap into information or energy that nobody else could see. So that's why I thought, okay, what's wrong with my brain? Is this, So I went to college, and of course, there's nothing wrong. Not only that, I realized that the human mind is just a fraction of what we are. And so that's why I realized I'm talking about consciousness.
Yeah.
I'm talking about unbound, infinite consciousness. I was tapping into that. And psychology was like, this teeny,
Yeah.
part of the story. And so I realized if I really want to understand how the mind works or how we function or who we are, I have to study or understand consciousness.
Yeah.
And of course, who's teaching consciousness? So I would put myself through hours and hours of meditation, trying to understand or discern what frequency is. What is energy? What is frequency? What is vibration?
Yeah.
And so for hours and hours, I would just sit and meditate and try like different techniques of meditation, because people will be like, oh, transcendental meditation does this or that. So I wanted to discover how my body and my mind and my consciousness was bringing that information. So long story short, after a long period of self-discovery, I went back to that energy that came to me when I was 5.
Yeah.
And I realized that it's a very specific frequency. It's a signature.
Yeah.
It's just it's one very specific frequency from where everything originates. So
Is it gratitude?
Source.
You call it the source.
I call it source.
Okay. Is that the same thing as gratitude?
Gratitude is more of a state of being to get to the source.
Okay.
You are source. So source is basically the energy from which everything comes out. Everything emerges. And so you're a part of source. I'm part of source. The planet is part of source. Animals are part of source. Everything is an extension of source. And so it's a specific frequency. And I believe that's what people call God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so because of that, I realized like everything goes back to this, to that one frequency, everything.
Yeah.
And so that's how I based my whole work after years and years and years of understanding all of this, experiencing all of this,
Yeah.
created a meditation called Connecting to Source to get you there, just like that.
Okay. And what does connecting to source look like? Like how is it different from other meditations?
So basically, I realized that because I went back, since I was 5, like through all the experiences, what was my brain doing? I realized that we have brain channels. And when I connected to this source versus connected to nature versus connected to the trees or whatever, I was in this very specific state of consciousness where you become everything. So I realized my brain it's like channels. I could see channels. And I realized that suddenly they're like channels were all over the place when you function during the day. But then when you focus on source, they kind of like, boom. They like align in a specific way. It's very, very specific. And it plugs you into this hub.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
I'm picturing aliens right now. So are we just aliens? Is that what you're talking about?
More than that.
Okay.
More than that. So I noticed that my brain was like plugged into that source, but also my body, my physical body starts to vibrate at a certain range, which I realize is between 734 and 1,000 hertz, minimum 734. And as soon as you're there, you kind of switch from being a normal linear human to being this multidimensional infinite consciousness. It's like you become like everything, just like that.
Yeah.
So the meditation that I created puts you in that state.
Yeah. What I'm hearing and the way that I'm perceiving this is, when I meet people that I love, for example, like on a day-to-day basis, I like to ask them, how's your battery? I think that's a good question to kind of gauge where they're at.
Yeah.
And instead of just how are you doing? And I'll get it in terms of a percentage. And so my dad, when I ask him, sometimes it's 30%, sometimes it's 85%. And when it's 30%, I pull him aside. I'm like, yo, Pops, like, you're like your iPhone. You need to plug yourself into a wall and charge up and get back to 80, 90, 100 so that you can go about your life in a positive way and not be exhausting yourself. So what I'm hearing is we're almost like an iPhone. We need to charge up and we need to connect to the source, AKA like an outlet in the wall.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool.
Because you are originally source and you are kind of a unit of consciousness, you're never disconnected, by the way. It's just here, the more you think you're separate and disconnected, you don't think about plugging yourself back in there, right?
Yeah.
You start to focus right and left and my job and stress and money and girlfriends or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you deplete yourself.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is just recharge at the source. It's exactly that.
Yeah. We're looking for the external, but it's just about charging the internal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very interesting. Talk to me about Omnia method of meditation. Is that the same thing as what you were just saying?
Yeah. So at the base of all my work is this understanding that everything starts there. So, so if you need healing, if you need guidance, if you need to understand like in reincarnation, well, it doesn't matter. Like, why do you plug yourself into other people? Now, other people, like other teachers, it's always important. You always learn. You learn from children, you're here to learn, but you're not here to repeat what you're being told. You're here to learn and really discover for yourself if that is truth to you or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why if you want to understand something, heal something, understand why am I stuck in this relationship? Why am I stuck with abundance? Whatever. You might as well go back to the source. The source is the beginning of you.
Yeah.
The source knows everything about you, So how you got here, why you're stuck, why you chose your parents, why you're, so
Yeah.
so why go somewhere else,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So, what was the question? Oh yeah, my so that's the reason why I based all my work on this understanding. So the healing methodology, for example, is knowing how to align your energy with source
Mm.
and also how to discern energy, because I can read the energy,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
And so, teaching remote viewing, teaching how to read the subtle energy to know the root cause of the problem. I mean, it's pretty
crazy. Yeah.
it's pretty involved, but it's very, very powerful. And
Yeah.
same thing with mastering the human mind. All kinds of courses, superhuman abilities, telekinesis, all those abilities that all are based on the idea that you have all the power in the universe if you start from source.
Yeah. But you have to choose to use it, and you have to plug into it and actually want to be a superhuman. What's my energy? I'm curious. Like when you first met me, what was your first thought?
What do you mean your energy? So when you ask the question is how are you feeling right now, or what type of energy you are, like as a being, where you came from, like what's the question?
I guess, when I meet someone, the first couple seconds I make my observations. I'm not making judgments. I'm just making observations,
Yeah.
which are either falsified or confirmed, or maybe there's a gray area.
Mm-hmm.
But I think within the first minute or two, you can kind of gather whether a person's sad or depressed or happy.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So I'm curious what your read was, completely honestly,
Yeah.
what your view was on me when I walked in.
When you first walked in,
Yeah.
there was a bit of confusion. A little bit as to, just a little confusion.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, right?
Give it to me straight.
But a lot of curiosity,
Mm.
like a lot of excitement and curiosity.
Yeah.
But there's in the background, that's what I would help you or ask you to, if you want, obviously,
Yeah.
to just release, because there's still like you're doing certain things that you think you should be doing, but in the background there's still a little bit of confusion regarding like the direction you're going towards. Am I close? Or
It's very interesting. When you say confusion of the direction you're going to, do you mean in life?
yes.
Or, interesting.
Yeah.
So you're able to like look at it at a very deep level, because that's interesting.
yeah, that's
Okay.
totally it's not just like
Yeah.
he didn't
And are you mostly making these observations through the eyes, or is it through hand movements, or like what are you observing?
So when I was younger, I realized that I could see the energy. Like I could, it's not just like aura, it's more, I see the information of the person. Like I don't know how to describe it.
It's like the data, like the metadata.
Kind of like the data.
Interesting.
But I don't go around reading people's
You're
data.
just like, he's
it's-
ABCD3.
Yeah, no. It doesn't work this way, because first of all, it's overwhelming, and it's not it's too much. Like you're here to just do your job.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing a healing session,
Yeah.
and the person's asking me, so of course, or now you just ask me a question. So it looks, I see it as videos, like as images, like I see you actually confused. Like I said, in the background of you being very driven, very excited, and very curious and adventurous. You're quite adventurous too.
Yeah, very adventurous. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I see as an image, like, but I feel. That's why I discern the feeling. Like I feel it's a confusion versus something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You read it. You read it really well. Wow.
Really?
I'm very impressed. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm very adventurous. I'm very curious, and I'm very happy, but I do have this underlying confusion about certain things, and that has hindered my ability to make decisions.
Exactly.
And as I become a man, and I'm 28, I just, my girlfriend now, she has a daughter. And so her daughter now being in the picture, I've had to be, I've learned I need to be more of the decision maker. As a man, you want to lead, right? Like the woman wants to kind of just be in her feminine energy and flow with the man. And for her to be able to do that and enter that space, the man needs to be the one that's making the decisions and being confident in those decisions. So I'm working on the confusion right now. I'm trying to hammer it down.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't forget, you have to work on it for yourself before you can help others. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
have to have the clarity for yourself about who you, where you're going, or whatever the question is,
Yeah.
before you can lead other people. You know, you have to love yourself before you can love
Absolutely.
other people. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what. So I teach people how to pick up that information
Yeah.
and how to discern it, so you're not projecting your own stuff. You know, like so how do you read the energy? How do you prepare? How do you discern? How do you make sure you're out of the picture, that it's objective? So all of this I teach, and you know, in my courses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Are most of the people that you're working with, would you say, are they unconscious?
Well, actually, to be honest, my work, if you look on my website,
Yeah.
like my courses are pretty advanced
Okay.
and pretty technical, I want to say. I'm very methodical. Like, for example, as an example, right? People who do Reiki or hands-on healing or something like that, like they know to bring positive energy, to bring light or something.
Yeah.
But if you ask specifically, what is it that they're doing, or how if you ask specifically, yeah, he told me that. If you ask specifically, what energy are they really bringing? How are they reading the energy? You know, they don't know the specificity, you know, and that's how my work or my methods are different. So in order to learn that specificity, it's pretty methodical. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty technical. So that's why, you know, all my courses are pretty advanced in that sense. And I would normally attract people who are at that, like at the next level, they've already studied with such and such, and now it's kind of like graduation, kind of PhD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Having said that, even people who have never done anything also are attracted because of they get the base of everything, which is that source frequency.
Yeah. How far can you take this source? Like when you know, the ultimate level of superhuman, like what does that look like?
Oh, okay. You mean as a human?
As a human.
What would the ultimate way of being?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so the more you align with source, embody source, you become source here, the divine being in human form. You start to function at a whole different level. So right now you're using your brain, you know, in a cognitive way, you know, to think of questions, then you have to think of the words and then say the words, and I have to listen to the words and process, what does he mean, blah, blah, blah. And that, you know what I mean? So it's a very cognitive, very linear way. Your brain is functioning in this way. But when you expand, and by the way, I don't believe it's like 10% capacity and then 20% and then 30%. It doesn't work this way.
Yeah.
You're functioning with 10% capacity, but when you work with source, you convert. It's like your brain transfers from linear to multidimensional, like suddenly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You become the whole thing. And so when you are at that level, you start to see beyond what you normally can see. You start to hear beyond what you normally could hear. You start to sense beyond the human senses. So your abilities are extraordinary. You can use them in so many different ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's really like a superpower.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever struggled with panic attacks or anxiety?
Yes. Yes. Especially when I was younger. So I remember in college, I think it was. Yeah. It's usually, I don't know why, but it was in supermarkets.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Probably because of all the seed oils that they're using.
Yeah, right.
Stop it.
Yeah. So I don't know, supermarkets and stores. I don't know, because there's a lot of people and checkout. I don't know, something about that. I would have these like I need to get out of here kind of a thing, panicking thing. And sometimes also driving, because I had a really bad car accident one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this comes back every now and then, but, through breathing and also homeopathy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was able to master it, to
Yeah.
get out of it. Yeah.
I
Why
noticed.
do you ask?
I'm asking because I noticed for myself, I started having more panic and anxiety as I became more spiritual. So
Interesting.
I feel like for the first 26 years of my life, especially once I became an entrepreneur, I was living in the ego mind, right? I was it's all about money and this and that. And I didn't even know who God was. I didn't know the Holy Spirit. But once I went through pain and suffering and I found God and I became more spiritual, that's when I started having the heart palpitations. I thought I was having heart attacks. And, retroactively, as I look at it, I'm like, okay, this was a spiritual rewiring that was happening because God knows that I'm elevating in my faith and in my spirituality. But people that have that superhuman level of consciousness, I feel like would probably be more susceptible to anxiety and panic because you're feeling at such a higher level.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because I want to tell you two things about this. This is very important. When you become more spiritual, you're opening up your energies to different frequencies, invisible frequencies, right? You're opening up to the unknown. Right? And so, because again, we're not trained. I have so many people who go to some, I'm not judging, but I'm just saying that's what happens sometimes. They go to some spiritual experience, some shamanic experience or something. They come back with horrible attachments. So that's the first issue, is that you open up, and usually pretty quickly, because you want this and you open up, and then when you're not trained in the beginning, especially, you start to attract all kinds of interfering energies. I call them attachments because I see them. I can see them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody has
We all
pretty
have
much. Especially like, the average human who's focused on, anger and greed and, control and everything else. So they have multiple ones. And those who are, criminals and, obviously, or child molesters or something,
Yeah.
So, and also mental illness. Schizophrenics, for example, have a ton of attachments. These are beings and entities that are talking to them, and they're hearing things. They are so open and sensitive that they actually hear the person, the being. They cannot see them. Sometimes they can. And so, but we call it mental illness.
Right.
And so I've worked with so many schizophrenics, and then, they're on drugs or what. I mean, of course, they're given drugs and everything else. And I can see the entity like right there. And I'll just like take off the entity, and then the visions go away. So what I'm saying is, your question was, how come when I open up spiritually, it's because your energy is attracting all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So until you have to train yourself to discern, well, who's there talking? Who's there telling me to do this and that? And who's there opening up my energy,
Yeah.
And also learning to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the most important things that I've found is, I do want to have an open heart for the people around me and be more spiritual and whatnot. But again, like you said, you have to have those healthy boundaries. So what?
Discern.
So what are some ways that people can establish boundaries for themselves?
Another thing also that I want to mention.
Yeah.
So that's kind of on the not so positive side, but on the positive side, I've had so many of those where you're just sitting there minding your own business, or you're in a meditation.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you feel a ton of energy going through your body, like electricity. Have you had that before?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it is so strong. Like sometimes like you can barely hold your body, or it makes you dizzy or whatever. And you're basically being upgraded. I want to say, you've heard that term.
Yeah.
You're downloading a much higher frequency of information. So that makes you feel weird and, like off. And if you're not clear, okay, what is happening? Am I like going crazy or something like that? It could give you panic attacks or anxiety. Like, what's happening to me? Like, why is my body trembling, or why is for no reason? Or, You know what I mean? Why am I getting all like dizzy or having like some sort of episode? And so that's what happens also when you open up like that.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
been happening to me more recently too. I've been getting dizzy and, I eat very healthy. My electrolyte levels are always on par and I find myself overwhelmed sometimes spiritually. So I'll sit down and just meditate, close my eyes and
Yes.
it helps.
Drink a lot of water, sit down. And also what happens is that you become so sensitive energetically that, for example, when there are solar flares
Mm.
or the Schumann, what am I saying? The Schumann, oh my God. The Schumann,
I don't know who this is.
the Schumann frequency. Oh my God. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
so when you open up like that, you become so sensitive that sometimes even when there are strong solar flares, they affect the magnetic field around the planet, and your consciousness is a lot more expanded. You get affected by the magnetic field around the planet and makes you dizzy.
Interesting.
Yes. And the dizziness then gives you also nausea. So that's
Right.
why, so there's all kinds of energetic things that
Yeah.
you open up to that start to give you weird symptoms. And then that triggers anxiety. You're like,
Mhm.
wait, what's happening? Am I sick? You know?
Right.
So it's a lot.
It's a lot.
People want to open up spiritually, but it's a lot.
Yeah. I've noticed sometimes it's like, it's hard to discern exactly what's happening. Like, I'm like, am I dizzy because I'm dehydrated? Is it because I'm overwhelmed? Is it stress? Like, so when you do feel off, what would you say is the best practice to kind of define why you feel off?
Yeah. So I was saying earlier that I teach people to discern frequency, discern energy, and read the energy. So you have to be, and every time is different. You can't say, oh, yesterday I was dizzy because of the magnetic field and therefore every time. No, like you were saying. So the best way is just to sit down and first drink water.
Yeah.
Why? Because you could be dehydrated.
Yeah.
But also what happens is that when you're opened up energetically and you drink water, I don't know how to describe it. It brings the focus back and the chemistry back to the physical body instead of kind of being out there. And it starts to settle you. It starts to kind of bring you back into the body and kind of neutralize whatever's pulling at you. So that's the first thing. Sit down, drink water, close your eyes and breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, and bring your focus to the heart. Because the head is like thinking, what's going on? So you want to quiet your mind and bring the focus to the heart and feel. You feel the information. You ask, sometimes it's collective.
Right.
It's nothing to do with you.
Right.
So you feel, is this collective? You're going to feel a yes.
Yeah.
Is this dehydration? You're going to feel I'm just zipping through a technique,
Yeah, totally.
But as an idea, you can at least start that way.
Yeah. No, that's really well said. I love that. I want to talk a bit about self-healing from things like grief and like death, mortality. I think that's such an interesting topic. So, how do you recover when you're struggling with grief?
Oh my God.
Or more so, what's the process of grief that you've noticed?
I had a dog for 12 years.
Yeah.
And she died, obviously, eventually. And I cannot tell you the level of grief I didn't even know was possible.
Wow.
Even though I knew exactly when she was going to go.
Yeah.
And I could see just before she was going to go, like the energy where she was going. Like I was so clear that she was okay and where she's going. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, and even with that sort of clarity, I was devastated.
Yeah.
I felt like my heart was like ripped out of my chest. It was so, so painful. So I experienced that level of grief so deeply for a very long time too. I was like, well, okay, it's enough already. That I had to work through what is happening. Why is it so painful?
Yeah.
And in addition to the psychological, the
Yeah.
idea, perspective, from a psychological perspective, you're with this person every day or what have you, and suddenly you're not. This is the intellectual, psychological part that's very difficult. But then there's the energetic. What happens, you and me right now, we're talking, but we're also exchanging energy.
Yeah.
We're exchanging energy and we're connecting on an energetic level
Yeah.
in the same way as we're connecting with those listening.
Right.
This energetic imprint stays with you. And so it's almost like it changes the frequency. It's like it's imprinted on your cells.
Right.
And
It's kind of, I like to liken it to like a passport, how they have like different stamps.
yes,
Like you're getting stamped every time you meet somebody.
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this stamp is not going away until you know there's a stamp and you erase it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're carrying on with a bunch of stamps. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. And so the energetic imprint is so profound, so deep, especially if it's a parent or a kid, because the more you live together, the closer you are. I mean, the imprint gets deeper and deeper and
Yeah.
deeper and deeper. And all of a sudden, this person's gone. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
It's like a part of you that it's like your reality doesn't make sense.
Right.
That's why it's so profound. And to really heal grief, you have to do this cellular deprogramming. You have to take out these imprints energetically as well as, mentally, spiritually.
Yeah. So
It's-
fascinating. I have a very close relationship with my parents, and I like to spend a lot of time with them. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that there needs to be a level of detachment to protect my future self. But I also want to really enjoy the moments that I have with them now while they're here, and God willing, they'll be here forever. So what's that balance? Like, how do you manage detachment, but also still fully being present and enjoying the time that we do have with people that we love?
It's very interesting. I love your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
These are off the
It's
top.
like-
I'm just rapid fire.
but it's like so important. It's
Thank
like
you.
if people understood these things and did something, they'll be so freer, like so much happier.
Yeah.
So this is very important, boundaries, right? You say, okay, I really want to love this person. I want to hang out. But when I'm there, I feel like I'm like sucked into their energy. And I get home and I'm like, there's
Feel
this
icky.
codependency. And it's like, you know what I mean? And then before you know it, it's like, it gets to a very difficult place to like redetach yourself. So it's all programming. The more you spend time with them, the more the imprint is profound. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper in your cells.
Yeah.
Right now, sorry, I was just like, for some reason, your dad has a lot to do with your head and your feet for some reason. But anyway, so their energy is literally imprinted in your cells, in your body.
Yeah.
So what you can do is spend as much time as you want before you meet them. You
Yeah.
already set the intention that I'm going to be very connected. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
But none of their stuff is going to stick. None of their stuff, none of their energy, none of their, stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to go and get imprinted on my cells. That's the first thing before you meet them.
Yeah.
Then you spend the time here, and then once you're done, you go home, you do what I call energetic flush. Like you take a shower,
Yeah.
you say the same
Yeah.
thing. Okay, that's the connecting to source as well. You can use it. You bring light that energetically is going to flush out their frequency.
Yeah.
And you bring it through your body, through all your cells, like you flush, 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 and then you go to sleep.
Yeah. So interesting. It's almost like you're being intentional and you put on this armor before
Exactly.
you go meet them. And then once you're done, you take the armor off and you cleanse yourself.
Exactly.
That's such a good way to look at it.
Think about this. If we were like this, like if we grew up like this, there wouldn't be any codependency, any grief actually to that degree because, you're every day taking a shower, energetic shower.
Right. And you could do that with everybody in your life.
Exactly.
Technically.
Exactly.
That's such a cool practice.
Yes.
Very
So you
interesting.
can use the connecting to source
Yeah.
to do that as well, because that's the source, like the original pure clean of who you are. So
Yeah.
when you bring it through your body, it's like anybody else that doesn't belong is out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see those attachments in people, like when I'm working with them, and I say, well, your dad is in your shoulder right now. And then they'd be like, oh, but I love my dad. And I said, but that's not the point. You're not supposed to have other people's energy or frequency in your body. So the fact that you love them, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
you're taking on their frequency.
Yeah.
So that's how it works.
Very interesting. I have a
Yeah.
question about the shoulder part. So a couple months ago, I was having a lot of shoulder pain up here.
Right there.
And my friend Hatef, shout out Hatef, he kept saying, you're emotionally like strung out right now. This is not physical. It's on your left side. It's on your heart side. This is an emotional pain that you need to figure out. And I did a lot of reflecting. And once I nailed what it was, the pain went away.
What was it?
Parental related.
Is your mom?
Yeah, mom, dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually your mom. Do you also have a sister who wasn't? Do you have a sister?
I have a sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your mom is here, is actually like on the left side.
Yeah.
And then your sister is in the front. So
Oh,
Yes.
interesting. And what does that mean exactly?
So the shoulder is symbolic for responsibility. So and the left side is usually symbolic for the feminine, which makes sense. I mean, I've seen fathers on the left side as well, but usually, and in your case, it's your mom. Actually, it goes in your neck as well, from the neck to the shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say responsibility, what does that mean? Like, is it?
Any sort of responsibility could be material, financial. You're worried about their health, or just any sort of burden.
Yeah. Well, you nailed it. Dang, she got me.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears before I start crying. Can we talk about ayahuasca?
Yes.
Is that something that you think is an effective way to, have the ego death or find yourself spiritually?
Right. Yeah. I personally have had so many incredible, insane experiences spontaneously since I was 5.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, where I told you about the source experience, I see beings. I've seen myself on other planet. I mean, like crazy stuff.
That's wild.
Go inside my body, heal. I mean, so I know it's possible.
Yeah.
And of course, for me, I feel we are meant to do everything organically. You know what I mean? However, I know a lot of people can't get there, because they've been so closed off, or maybe they tried and then they got stuck with some guru or something. You know what I mean? Maybe they had a bad experience and they try ayahuasca and they have this opening.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem, or I don't agree with when we start to rely on it to have experiences every single time, because then, it's still a substance outside yourself.
Yeah.
So it's okay to explore and feel and expand. But then every time I want to connect to a spirit family, it starts to defeat the purpose.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Very interesting. So you think it's safe? Maybe it's not safe. I don't know. But you're saying it's okay to try. Just don't be too dependent.
Yeah, because then you become dependent, and then you're defeating the purpose of understanding your own power.
Yeah.
Then you're replacing some drug with the mushroom or something. You know what I mean? So then what's the point?
Yeah. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in aliens? Back to the aliens, I have to ask, do you think that stuff is real?
It's real. You
Is
are
it?
one. Come on.
Are we actually aliens? Is that real?
Of course it's real. Come on. So I told this to Sean, actually. I keep going back to that example because it's the most, kind of solid proof, so to speak, other than UFOs and stuff like that. But, in my movie, Among Us, I don't know if you saw it.
I haven't. I'd love to.
Yeah. So it's all about aliens. I mean, aliens in terms of non-human beings, like who are they, where they come from, are they real?
Mm.
I interviewed a geneticist, Gary Nolan, from Stanford. I mean,
Yeah.
so he's, and then I asked him, I was talking about human DNA, and I was saying, like, where did the human DNA come from? What's junk DNA? People think it's like alien stuff, like what's going on? And he said to me that the human DNA is, follows a certain rule, like a certain trajectory. And if you go back to the origin of it, the very beginning of it, it ends up being that it showed up basically 9 billion years ago. So 9 billion years and planet Earth is like 5 billion years. So like, where did it come from?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but other than that, I can also see
Yeah.
that we all came from somewhere else. Even the origin of humanity, I mean, not just, these last generations. So, but everybody is not necessarily from the same place, obviously,
Yeah.
So having said that, it's a matter of degree. Like, let's say you're I'm not gonna say, but let's say you're a Pleiadian or something, right? Originally Pleiadian,
What is that?
like from the Pleiades.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can. So many people talk about Pleiadians, So let's say you are originally from there.
Yeah.
And you decide to incarnate as human, like right now.
Yeah.
So if this is your first time or something, so maybe you're 10% Pleiadian and 90% human, or, you know what I mean? Somebody else has been here a long time or what have you, is maybe 50% Arcturian, 50%, you know what I mean? Like everybody has a different degree of alienness.
Wow.
I'm making words up now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What percent alien are you?
What do you think?
I say you're like 78% human, maybe 22% alien.
More like the other way around.
You're 70% alien?
Something like that.
Jesus Christ. So then
Something like that. It's a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
So going back to the source thing, the more you connect back to the source, the more your original DNA, like your original self, starts to kind of get activated, like wake up, because that's the original you. You were Pleiadian or Arcturian or whatever before you were human, right? So that part of you, the more you do this work, the more you awaken to that until eventually you're like, oh, I know who I am. I know where I came from. So it's super cool.
That's a trip. What do you think happens when we sleep? Do you think our soul leaves our body and then comes back?
Yes. So I think that's the point of going to sleep, is for your spirit to detach from the body, take a break. Most of the time, it's just right outside the body. It's just sitting there and allowing the physical body to heal or do whatever it needs to do. But it's sometimes it goes off and travels around space and comes back. And
Yeah. It's such an interesting concept. I haven't really slept for 3 days, and I actually feel fine. I feel okay.
Non-stop?
I mean, I slept like 4 or 5 hours a night, but usually I'm 8 to 10 hours. So right now I'm like, I'm on fumes.
That's a lot of sleeping.
Yeah. I sleep 8. I need 8.
Yeah, good. Yeah, me too, actually. Yeah.
What's your sleep routine? I'm curious. How do you think sleep can be best optimized?
Yeah, a lot of people think that you need less sleep, and maybe at some point, but I need my sleep. Like I need, like, I feel 7 to 8 hours is like the minimum. Like I feel really good.
Yeah.
Having said that, sometimes I'm functioning on 3 hours sleep and I'm perfectly fine.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I like it better.
Yeah.
So and I'm better at night, in the evening. So I work better at night instead of like very early morning. So everybody is like different. Yeah, I've tried different ways, and I feel like where my body's at, is this way.
Yeah, very interesting. They say 6 to get by, 7 to function, 8 to dominate.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I feel the best when it's 8 hours. It's just like I'm clear, I'm calm, like I'm more relaxed. Not relaxed, just rested.
Rested.
Yeah.
Totally. I would love to do a part 2 with you. We do got to wrap it. We got to get to this event together.
Yes.
But thank you so much for coming on. I really
Thank-
appreciate it. If people don't follow you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so for my spiritual consciousness work, they can go to carolinecorey.com. And for my movies, I made quite a few interesting movies.
Let's go.
Omniummedia.com.
Okay.
And also, I just came up with this watch thing. If people are interested, I'll show it to
The
you.
Superhuman Watch.
Yeah, the Superhuman Watch is super cool. It's basically has my frequencies.
Okay.
And people, speaking of the meditation,
Yeah.
so it's like, do you see how?
Let me see.
I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, there you go. Kind of.
No. Well, anyway, there's red light. It's the information
see
is
it.
being transferred to. Oh yeah, to.
There you go. It's
It's
okay.
hard to see. Well, anyway, here. Well, anyway, basically, there's a red light.
Yeah.
See the red light?
Yeah.
And so basically the frequency is being transferred, just like you do in meditation and you hear the frequency through the audio.
Yeah.
Here you're getting the frequency through light.
Ah.
And you're just like, it's just sitting there. And I have the meditation on there. There's a clearing, energetic clearing that I was talking about. It's all happening. And it's just like so cool.
Yeah.
So people can look that. And there's one for anxiety.
Oh, wow.
So
Is it one of those zapper things? Is like zap you?
Doesn't know.
It doesn't zap.
No,
Okay.
you don't feel anything.
Okay,
It's
good.
just like it keeps. I have one for chemistry balance. It's really good.
Yeah.
So that's superhumanwatch.com.
Amazing. Go check it out, guys. Thank you again for coming on. Make sure you guys go follow Caroline and stay tuned for another episode of the Divij Zen podcast coming soon. We'll see you guys in the next one.